Throughout history, some men are remembered for their great deeds and achievements, others for their inventions and discoveries, but some men are remembered for slightly different reasons. In this episode, we will look at a man responsible for the deaths of nearly 300 women, Matthew Hopkins, the Witchfinder General. Let us begin. Not much is known about Matthew Hopkins' early life. We know that he was born in Great Wenham, Suffolk, around 1620, the fourth son of James Hopkins, a Puritan clergyman and vicar. When his father died in 1634, Matthew inherited money, which he later used to buy the Thorn Inn in Mistley, Essex. It is also believed that Matthew Hopkins had some legal training. To understand what led Hopkins to witch hunting, it is essential to understand the historical background. In 1642, divisions between King Charles I of England and his Parliament erupted into a civil war over control of the country. This led to a lot of lawlessness in large parts, with the majority of law officials preoccupied with the war. Some men, including Hopkins, were able to take advantage of this vacuum of authority. It was probably in the Thorn Inn where in March 1644, Hopkins claimed he overheard various women discussing meeting with the devil. He became convinced that witchcraft was being practiced near his home and that they were trying to kill him. He and his partner, John Stern, accused a total of 23 women of witchcraft. These women were brought to Chelmsford and put on trial in 1645. Due to the ongoing civil war, Justice of the Peace, presided over by the Earl of Warwick, conducted the trial, rather than justices of the disease. 4 of the accused women died whilst in prison, whilst the other 19 were found guilty and hanged. Shortly after this, Hopkins gave himself the title of Witchfinder General, and claiming to have been commissioned by Parliament, started to move all over the East Anglia region, going from town to town. He and his associates began to charge those towns for their services. For the most part, they charged 20 shillings a town, although on some occasions they charged more. In Stowmarket, they were paid £23, roughly £3,400 in 2018. A rough estimate of his total earnings during his crusade is estimated at around £1,000. The group moved quickly, sometimes accusing and executing dozens at a time. A lot of the accusations were based on rumours, older women who claimed looked like they could be a witch. Some were even accused based on simple grudges or mere unpopularity within a community. These were all Hopkins needed to bring a suspect in and subject them to interrogation. The most infamous of all Hopkins' actions took place in Bury St Edmunds. On 27th of August 1645, at least 18 women were executed for witchcraft, and after a delay of a few weeks due to the advancing Royalist army, between 60 to 70 more at a later date. But despite the success of his witch hunting, Hopkins had some opposition to his work. Many at the time claimed it was mere financial greed which motivated him, something Hopkins denied. Many were critical of his methods, which were borderline torture. The longer he continued his hunting, the more officials and judges began to resist him, some even questioning the commission from Parliament. One of his biggest opponents was John Gall, the vicar in Great Stoughton. Upon hearing Hopkins was coming to Great Stoughton, Gall began to gather evidence of the torture and other excessive methods in use. Gall began to preach against Hopkins and even visited a woman who had been imprisoned by him. This opposition led Hopkins to avoid Great Stoughton altogether. By this point, his reputation had started to dwindle, and with ever-growing opposition and increased questioning from what law officials still remained, and a growing threat from Parliament, Hopkins and his associates retired towards the end of 1646. Throughout their witch hunting, Hopkins and Stern came up with many different methods for catching those that they suspected of witchcraft. At the time, gaining information about witchcraft through torture was unlawful in England, but this did not stop Hopkins and his associates. One method they employed was pricking. It was believed that all witches carried the devil's mark, a small mark on the body which was dead to all feeling. This was where witches would feed blood to their familiar, usually an animal such as a cat or a dog. Today, such marks are believed to have been moles or birthmarks. These marks would be poked and cut with blunt knives, sometimes with a retractable blade Hopkins was said to possess, meaning no wound would be left. If they could find no such mark, the suspect would be shaved of all hair and poked with special needles and cut further. Another favourable method they employed was the swimming test, where those suspected of witchcraft would be tied up, sometimes to a chair, and lowered into water. The belief was witches had renounced their baptism, so water would reject them. If a woman subjected to this method drowned, she was innocent and would go to heaven, and if she floated, she would be tried as a witch. Some more borderline torturous methods included forced starvation and sleep deprivation until they confessed, a method which may have led to some of the deaths whilst in prison. There are many myths and rumours surrounding the supposed sudden end of Matthew Hopkins' witch hunting. Some believe, in a sense of irony, he himself was accused of witchcraft, subjected to his own methods of torture and subsequently executed. Others suggest word of his actions had finally reached Parliament and he was hunted down and either killed or fled the country. The truth, however, is slightly less exciting. Most historians agree that Hopkins died on 12th of August 1647 at his home in Manningtree, most likely of tuberculosis, and was buried a few hours later. In the end, no one truly knew the real reason behind Hopkins' witch hunting. Was it a genuine concern about evil plight in England? Was it simply greed, taking advantage of desperate, naive people during a time he felt he could get away with it? Or perhaps it was a mixture of both. Whatever the reason, despite a very short career of witch hunting, Hopkins left a lasting mark on English history. Whilst the exact number is unknown, it is thought around 300 women were executed as a result of Hopkins and his associates' crusade. There had been fewer than 500 executions for witchcraft in England between the 15th and 18th centuries, meaning they were responsible for more than every other witch hunter combined. But his legacy was not confined to England. His work was said to have influenced the witch hunting epidemic which spread through the colonies in America, with Hopkins' methods being employed. This resulted in 15 women and 2 men being executed in New England, and, most famously, the deaths and executions of at least 25 in Salem, Massachusetts, during the Salem witch trials. Thank you so much for watching. If you have enjoyed this video, it would be greatly appreciated if you could leave a like and share. If you would like to see more, then please subscribe. I also have a Patreon, where you can help support this channel in return for a variety of rewards, including early access to videos and the opportunity to help choose topics for future videos. The link can be found in the description below. Until next time, I've been Sam, and I hope to see you again soon.